There is no death in no man's land, only demotion. The heretic priests knew this, they just didn't think it applied to them. In life, they rose through blood-drenched hierarchies built on dogma, conviction, and ritualized cruelty. They called themselves speakers, flame-bearers, apostles of the pyre. Every sermon ended in fire. Every truth they spoke was an accusation, and every eye that turned to them added another rung to their invisible throne. Their ambition was not subtle. It didn't need to be. These were men who took pride in desecration, who gave commands with a smile while watching the faithful march into wire and mud and ruin. They carved ideology into flesh and called it scripture. They renamed entire battalions in their honor. They burned rivals alive in inverted altars and claimed it was devotion. They believed they would be remembered, but in the Trench Crusade, nothing is remembered, only repeated. And so, when they died, and they all did, some screaming, some smiling, all believing they had won something, they rose again, not as saints, not as martyrs, as trench ghosts, echoes, corrupted, memories, poisoned. Undead not by accident, but by momentum, spiritual inertia so massive it dragged their souls screaming back into the dirt. And when they emerged, there was no heaven waiting, no infernal throne to inherit, just fog, rust, silence, and still, ambition. Because even death couldn't strip it from them. These creatures, these heretic wraith lords, these ash-crowned, remember what it meant to command. And they remember that it mattered. That's the worst part. They rise not to rest, but to resume. The ghost leader doesn't lead because there's a war to win. He leads because the role is all that remains. A function divorced from meaning. A gesture with no cause. Like a general who marches not because the war continues, but because stopping would make him realize there's nothing left to fight for. And so they rebuild, again and again, constructing dead armies from the flayed remnants of their own congregations. Whispering sermons to wailing shadows, declaring hierarchies no one contests, awarding titles to cadavers. Each ghost king stands atop a frozen pyramid of obedience, howling decrees into a world that no longer responds. But they keep going. Not because they think they'll succeed, but because not trying would mean accepting that they failed. They build kingdoms in the fog, not from stone, not from steel, but from memory, fractured, obsessive, false. Ruined sanctuaries become palaces. Shell-scarred cathedrals are named thrones. A shattered altar, half buried in ash, is repurposed into a war table. Statues with missing faces are crowned again. Every corner of no man's land that echoes with the ruin of meaning becomes a stage for the ghost kings to play out their grotesque theatre of empire. They do not govern, they perform. The wraith courts assemble at dusk that never ends. Nobles carved from regret line up in perfect silence, each one holding a title no one else can verify. Dukes of dirt, marquises of Mia, the Count of hollow triumph. Their sashes are made of torn flags. Their rings are melted bullet casings. Their oaths are recited in dead tongues, and their laws are declarations of obsession, bans on rust, proclamations of dominion over forgotten ridges, declarations of war against shadows that might be rival kings. The court scribes transcribe every edict with broken fingers, their fleshless hands etching endless proclamations into books no one will read. These ghosts, once aides, functionaries, clergy, now trapped in roles they no longer remember choosing, spend eternity preserving lies spoken by things that used to be men. They're the ones that push it. The choir boys who sang too sharp. The heralds who stumbled on titles. The tacticians whose maps folded the wrong way. Every hand that once lifted a relic, passed an order, or held a banner, now drags the weight of that failure in chains they no longer remember earning. They don't walk ahead of the palanquin. They are lashed to it. Bound by hooks that pierce more than flesh. Some march, others crawl. A few are just silhouettes fused to metal, torsos stitched into the track housing, faces stretched across radio emitters that scream orders no one follows. The palanquin doesn't roll forward. It is pulled, by hierarchy, by history, by people who once called the Ghost King Lord and now power his throne with every miserable, soul-grinding step. The ones who served him in life serve again, but now as engine parts and warning sirens, as ornaments and leverage. They are not chosen, they are claimed, and they will never be free. Every day is a pageant of madness, a masked procession of lost identity, and still, the kings sit higher than the rest. Their skulls are painted with soot, their eyes burn with nothing. Their voices ring like brass struck underwater, loud, slow, final. They believe their domains expand with every speech, every decree. They imagine borders, draw lines in the mist, name valleys after themselves, but the land never listens. No man's land is not a kingdom, it is the corpse of one. And yet they persist. They persist because to stop would be to recognize that they are not rulers. They are echoes. And echoes do not command. They repeat. Some even take audiences. Living prisoners dragged before the court, forced to bow, to recite pledges, to accept invented titles. Some are made jesters. Others, consorts. Some are executed for imagined slights and then raised into undeath, only to be judged again. It is not about control. It is about performance. The Ghost King does not care if you believe he has power. He only cares that he appears to. This is not governance. It is liturgy. Ritual without gods. Ceremony without salvation. A court not of power, but of despair, mimicking authority to keep from collapsing under the weight of knowing it was never real to begin with. The throne must move. It is not enough to rule over dust. The Ghost Kings must be seen ruling over dust, must advance across the dead horizon in mobile monuments to authority, or else the illusion collapses. And so the Tank Palanquin was born. Not crafted, not designed, assembled, compelled, wrenched into existence by the stubborn will of those who refused to admit they had nowhere left to go. The first were little more than carcasses, broken tanks, shattered hulls, rust-choked wrecks half submerged in mud and failure. But where the living saw ruins, the Ghost Lords saw thrones. Thrones that could move. Thrones that could crush. Thrones that could pretend. And so they bound souls to them. Not theirs. Never theirs. The damned don't carry their own burdens. They outsource them. The faithful were reaped first. Sycophants and martyrs, standard bearers and choir boys. Their souls were chained with barbed wire and sleepless doctrine, shackled to the tank's wheels, embedded in its armor, dissolved into its engines. Some were dragged, others were burned down into fuel. The worst were imprisoned in the drive systems, alive in ways that shouldn't be possible, screaming forever as the throne lurched forward with every tortured breath. There are no gears, there is no petrol. The Tank Palanquin moves because it must, because the master wills it, because the machine doesn't need to function, only to obey. Each one is different. All are the same. Some bristle with rusted weaponry scavenged from other dead machines. Autocannons that wheeze when they fire. Mortars that cough dust before lobbing half-melted charges into the fog. Others are adorned like reliquaries, covered in bones, icons, war trophies, and shattered shrines. Some fly banners stitched from the skin of traitors. Others blare sermons through radio grills rigged to vocal cords no longer connected to any throat. All are impossible. And at the top, always, the Lord, the Ghost King. A silhouette against the fog. Cloaked in flags, adorned in medals earned centuries ago and never surrendered. He does not sit. He poses. One hand gripping a bent scepter, the other always ready to signal the charge. Not because he must. Because the moment he stops performing command, he vanishes. The throne is not a weapon, it is a stage, and its engine runs on misery. Those who fall behind are chained to the hull, those who displease are made part of it, and those who die in its path are dragged until there's nothing left but streaks of marrow and whispers. A living army may retreat, the Tank Palanquin does not. It moves until the battle ends, or the world does, whichever comes last. You can still be punished after death. That's what makes the Trench Ghost hierarchy so perfectly cruel. It doesn't end. Titles survive flesh. Oaths survive decay. And shame. shame fossilizes. When a ghost king marks a name in his book of grievances, that name becomes a sentence. The ledger is spectral, but the weight is real. And there are always more names. Some are bound with chains etched from battlefield confessions, their links formed by every betrayal whispered on the edge of dying breath. Others are shackled by lineage, sons of traitors, daughters of deserters, kin of those who faltered in life and now inherit the weight in undeath. The Palanquin does not forget. Every soul that pulls it forward bears a name they cannot drop. These aren't slaves in the traditional sense. There is no rebellion, no resistance, only obligation stretched beyond reason, punishment ritualized into architecture. A former adjutant may become the axle. A choir leader who once misspoke a hymn now becomes the wailing horn that announces every arrival. The archivist who misfiled a casualty report may now reside in the machine's hull, reciting every victory in reverse until his voice is erased. Justice doesn't factor in. This is ideology enforced through damnation. Sometimes the condemned are aware. You can hear them. Screams flattened into engine rumble, begging, woven into the static of corrupted radio casters. Some try to earn forgiveness by singing louder, dragging harder, confessing into the ether with voices long since flayed into sound alone. It never works. A ghost king does not forgive. He curates. He arranges his servants into hierarchies of pain, some honored with lighter chains, some pressed beneath wheels, others exalted through humiliation. Every punishment is a form of pageantry, every degradation a performance, not to correct but to remind, not to cleanse but to display. Some are given voices only to scream, others are denied mouths, so their silence becomes louder than sound. The point isn't correction, it's ritualized hierarchy. A system where every link in the chain is another declaration of the king's authority, and another grave for those who once thought they were free. The Tank Palanquin doesn't move on fuel, it moves on debt, on grudges, on names written in curses, reinforced through eternity. And if you listen closely, beneath the grind of metal and the howl of banshee grills, you can hear the hierarchy dragging itself forward, one condemned name at a time. The war ended, but no one told the dead. The trench ghost warbands do not march to win. They march because it is the only thing left. The act of advance is all that holds them together. Motion in lieu of meaning, battle as a substitute for identity. Without conflict, they dissolve. And so they make sure there's always a war. They fight the living. They fight the damned. They fight each other. Sometimes for reasons that were valid once. Sometimes for reasons invented mid-charge. Sometimes for reasons no one remembers. Not even the kings who scream them. Some warbands refuse to speak. Others chant war hymns that haven't been sung since the 1st century of the Crusade. Some carry banners bearing dates that no longer correspond to any calendar. Others burn flags before each assault, then fly the ashes stitched into new ones. Time doesn't pass for them. It corrodes. They don't occupy. They haunt. Once a trench is taken, they don't garrison it. They mimic the rituals of garrisoning. They post guards who no longer see. They establish command posts where radios only broadcast memory. They light signal flares into mist that answers with nothing. These are not armies. They are processions. Ghost generals plan offensives against enemies already defeated. Wraith radios transmit orders to divisions lost 500 years ago. Scribes record victories that never occurred, then burn the logs to erase contradictions. And the palanquins keep moving, throne after throne crawling forward over dead ground like kings competing in a race no one else knows exists. Pride drives them harder than vengeance. If one ghost king achieves a conquest, captures a ridge, seizes a shrine, wipes out a mortal regiment, others soon follow, desperate not to fall behind in a race that offers no prize. And so the feuds begin, not over land, not over ideology, but over perception. A duchess who proclaims herself sovereign of the wounded earth is immediately challenged by 3 others who claim the same title. A marquis declares victory over the 19th irregulars, only to be denounced by a ghost who insists she ended them first. The disputes are endless, the battles recursive, the casualties irrelevant, because nothing matters more than being seen to matter. The Ghost Crusade has no direction, it has velocity. A campaign waged not toward a goal, but away from the truth that there is nothing left to conquer. It begins with sound, not noise, not mechanical thunder. Something older, something deeper. A low ambient groan that seeps through the fog like blood through cloth, too constant to be wind, too sorrowful to be mere metal. The first thing you hear is the choir. They call it the wire song. A dissonant wail, stretched across pitches no human throat could produce, made from the voices of the bound, the ones grafted into antennae, tangled into comms arrays, woven into the barbed lattice that festoons the tank palanquins like a crown of agony. Their mouths may be gone, their minds broken, but the song continues. They scream names. Some are their own. Some are titles. Some are just syllables choked on over centuries until they became the language of arrival. And with the choir comes the light. Flickering, stuttering, spectral beams cast from searchlights that were never installed. They sweep the mist in wide arcs, seeking life, scenting fear, illuminating nothing. These lights aren't powered by electricity. They are the gaze of the condemned made manifest. The tank moves slower now, not out of weakness, but out of certainty. It knows you're there. Every piece of it, the bones wired into the wheels, the banners soaked in grave dust, the painted sigils crafted from enemy insignias, all of it sings in its own way. Some rustle when there is no wind, some clank in time with forgotten hymns, some bleed. And above it all sits the king, the ghost lord, the monarch of regret. He doesn't raise his weapon immediately. He observes, measures, tallies. Every enemy is a new entry in a never-ending ledger. Every battle another attempt to fill a hole that cannot be sealed. His armor is layered in awards that no longer exist. His throne is welded to the husk of what was once a command tank, but now bears only shrines to past victories, relics wired directly into the hull, helmets of fallen foes, medals torn from the chests of the dead, shattered icons looted from burned chapels. These are not trophies, they are anchors. Each one a desperate attempt to prove the Ghost King still matters, each one a whisper of significance, but none of it ever satisfies. Because the truth haunts even the dead. That this throne, this tank, this roving monument to grief and obsession, it does not elevate him, it consumes him. The longer he rides it, the less of him remains. The memories rot first, then the motives. Eventually, only the performance survives. The pose of command, the gesture of speech, orders barked with no voice, fury expressed with no soul behind it, and still he rides. Battle after battle, war after war. He cannot stop, because stopping means reckoning. It means looking down and realizing that the throne was never his, that he is not seated atop it, he is part of it. It feeds on him. It feeds on everything. You can decorate it, you can name it, you can baptize it in the blood of the living and the wails of the damned, but you cannot escape what it is. A sarcophagus with treads, a cathedral of lies, a black crown with no head beneath it. And so the Ghost King trundles onward, not out of glory, not out of hate, out of habit.